The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
It is now 10 minutes after 8. Welcome to the Forum at 8 here on SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader. This morning we're talking about blowing the whistle on corruption and other wrongdoings, both on the private and the public sector. I suppose the question that we're throwing out there is, would you blow the whistle? And if not, why not? What are some of the issues that you think are important before you consider blowing the whistle? Would like to get your thoughts then on this issue, or on 34701. That's the SMS line here on the program, 34701. But also, you can send me an email at gwalax@sabc.co.za, gwalax@sabc.co.za. Let me get your thoughts on the issue of blowing the whistle on corruption and other wrongdoings. Now, yesterday we spoke a little bit about government's intention, and Minister Jeff Radebe had announced that on Sunday that, among other things, government is considering naming and shaming those who've been convicted of corruption. And a lot of views were expressed about the naming and shaming of those convicted of corruption. But also, among other SMSs, we received one that said one of the primary things to do is really to protect those that blow the whistle. Is there an issue around the protection of whistleblowers in this country? What is the legislative environment in this area? Those are some of the issues that we would like to talk about. 0891 104 208. Send us an give us a call on 0891 104 208. I would like to hear from people's experiences. Have you blown the whistle and perhaps encountered problems? Talk to us about it. Would you consider blowing the whistle? What are the issues? 0891 104 208. Send me an SMS at 34701 and an email at gwalax@sabc.co.za. Let me welcome my guest on the program this morning, starting with Alison Tilley, Executive Director of Open Democracy Advice Centre. Very good morning. Nice talking to you again, Alison.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thanks indeed for your time. Also on the line, Gareth Newham. He's the head of the Governance, Crime and Justice Division at the Institute for Security Studies. Gareth, hello.
Hello and good morning to everybody listening.
Thank you very much. Let me start with you, Alison. I've already received a couple of emails here, and just to sum them up for you, people are concerned about protective measures that are there once people have blown the whistle. Are those fears founded in your view?
The fears are founded. We do have a legal framework to protect whistleblowers, but it isn't working. We know that it's not working from people being dismissed for speaking out around these issues to what appear to be assassinations of people who have spoken out and come forward in relation to reporting corruption. And we know that certainly in terms of sort of extra legal frameworks or extra legal protection, that's not something that's being considered or is in place. So I have to say that that there are serious concerns about whistleblowers, such that just in terms of looking at these issues, the Right to Know campaign has now really identified whistleblowers as speaking out as one of the key components of the right to know, because it's central to people being able to raise the concerns that they need to raise, both within the national security context and, of course, outside of that.
And it's important that we should highlight some examples of people that have been assassinated after having blown the whistle. We were talking a little bit earlier on about the political situation in the Northwest Province, and you may very well remember that there was somebody who was assassinated in the Northwest Province after blowing the whistle on corruption. Moses Pakwe was believed to have evidence linking Mr. Volmerans to corruption in the municipality. He was assassinated. Of course, we've also had a similar issue in the Mbombela Stadium, bidding issue and so on. People have died.
Yes, they have. And I think that they are certainly some of the people that we've recognized as part of Right to Know, looking at the whistleblowers calendar for 2013. And we've tried to really, put up there something that you look at every day, just to remind ourselves that there are people out there who have spoken out and who have, ended up in difficult circumstances, in some instances being dismissed, and then in other circumstances their families grieve for them.
And Alison, you, as the Open Democracy Advice Centre, you also released survey findings about how many of us in this country actually have blown the whistle on corruption. It may have been a month or two ago.
Yes, it was perhaps a little bit before that. The difficulty with with surveys is that they do get out of date quite quickly. But I think the numbers have stayed so constant. And what we're seeing is a decline in the number of people who are prepared to come forward and blow the whistle. And we don't necessarily have the explanation from each person as to why they don't want to come forward. But that decline, we think, is clearly may well be linked to the failure of the law to protect whistleblowers in terms of their jobs, and the failure of the system to protect some whistleblowers in terms of their lives.
Gareth, let me bring you in. Your experiences in this regard. How serious a problem is it that people aren't able to blow the whistle, and that some of them actually are assassinated in the process of blowing the whistle on corruption in this country?
It's very, very serious and deeply worrying because, as Alison has been saying, we've started to see a regression. You know, the legislative framework around protecting people who want to blow the whistle has been ongoing for over a decade now. South Africa signed various protocols, ratified various protocols to deal with corruption, from the United Nations to African Union to SADC, and they all talk about the need to provide a framework for allowing people to come forward with information about corruption and crime and be protected in doing so, because it's fundamental to a country that you can to fight corruption and crime, that you have safety for those that want to come forward and blow the whistle and talk about wrong things that are happening. And it needs to be a culture. It's not just having a law. The law is one important component there, but it needs to be something that everybody's actively working towards. So we've seen a development of the law over a decade now. What we're really lacking, I think, is political will. The most powerful people in the society have to lead by example. So we have to have a situation where we're not seeing MECs being arrested because they're involved in murders, and and mayors who are involved in murders, such as the Mospaco case, because they're actually trying to stop people from blowing the whistle. What we need to see a lot more in the media is people like MECs and senior government officials and politicians particularly are the ones coming forward with information, blowing whistles, and being ones to stand forward. And when they see somebody who's trying to blow the whistle, they're the ones who are actually acting as protectors. And I think that's where we're failing dismally in South Africa.
Sure. So you see, you think the issue of the political will, and this is the argument that we're going to get from the politicians. I mentioned just a little earlier on, before you came on, that on the business report today, Minister Thulas Nxesi has written about issues of corruption. His take, of course, is that perhaps not much noise is made about corruption in the private sector as it is about the public sector. But let me read you a paragraph that right at the beginning of this article, where perhaps he may say that this is exactly an indication of political will here. He starts off by saying, "It is generally accepted that corruption has become such a serious challenge that it is beginning to have a negative impact on South Africa's nation-building effort, as well as on its international image or reputation. It is for this reason that the ANC and its alliance partners have identified the fight against corruption as one of their priorities, alongside creating decent work, fighting poverty, promoting rural development, education and health, and combating crime." And the minister then, the point I'm making here is the minister will look at this and say, but isn't that the political will that you're calling for, Gareth?
Well, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to actually take action and to drive it. So we've been hearing from politicians that corruption has been taken seriously for a long time now. And indeed, many politicians do take it seriously because many people recognize that it is a huge problem. But we need to get to a situation of saying, if the most powerful people in our society recognize it as a problem, why is it getting worse? Because it's really up to those that have the power, those that can really use their power to facilitate a certain culture and drive this problem back. We keep on hearing the statements, but what we're seeing is actions different. So we see legislation being rolled back. You know, the protection of state information is rolling back freedom of expression, allowing people to come forward with information. It's putting very serious onerous sanctions on that if people do that. And we don't see the same politicians. And the minister's a good example. I'm sure he believes personally that we need to fight corruption both in the public and private sectors, but then we do have the whole thing where Nkandla happens. We're told that there might be corruption there, but we don't see the information coming out. So it's one thing to say it, but we want to see politicians driving it. They really can do a huge amount, and we've got to start seeing them doing it. It's not just what they say.
Alison, of course, as Gareth has pointed out, one of the things that we need to do is to create a culture of blowing the whistle. And you know, in South Africa, because we come from the history, or for instance, discouraging where people are seen as spies, to what extent then does that become a problem? One email pointed towards the fact that people have always been told that you can't be Mpimpi, and that perhaps may still be playing in the minds of the people.
Well, it's a very complicated question, and one would need quite a while to really do it justice. But I think what we can say is that, yes, there has been a culture which has been about not speaking out, not about not betraying your comrades. But I think that we also have moved quite a long way into a new context, which is the context of a constitutional state and a constitutional project, which is a project that we are all participating in. It's no longer a question of us versus them. It's us and us, and us together for us. And if we're unable to participate in that project because there is theft or waste or corruption, that it is our responsibility to ourselves and to the collective to speak out. So I think that the context has shifted. I think there are still obviously situations where people are in they're basically crooks and cahoots with each other, and they don't want to, they don't want to have anybody say anything. But I think that's a different situation. I think we are moving towards a situation where we are saying this is our collective project. We need to talk together about corruption, and we need to support those people who raise concerns. And if you do raise concerns and you are subject to harassment or victimization, that there do need to be people in your community, in civil society around you who support you and speak out and actually say that they thank you and that they admire you and that they want your issues dealt with. I think government has been sitting on the question of strengthening the whistleblowing legislation for 13 years now. So I have to say I'm not, let's just say I'm not going to hold my breath that this is going to happen anytime soon.
But what does it mean? What do you mean they've been sitting on the question of strengthening the cert?
Well, the Protected Disclosures Act was introduced in 2000, and one of the things that it didn't do was introduce proper sanctions and damages for people who blew the whistle and who were in some way compromised. There was the intention that the law be amended in order to strengthen those measures, and that intention was stated on record in Parliament back in the day. And the Department of Justice have kicked for touch. They sent it off to the Law Reform Commission. The Law Reform Commission came back with a draft law, and the draft law sits, I doubt if it's even on Minister Gedebe's desk anymore. It's probably being used as a doorstop or something. But
is there, in your view, is there a reason why government is reluctant to strengthen this legislation?
I don't know. There's certainly... it's certainly, if one were to be paranoid, which I'm not, one might think that there is some, darker motive behind it. But it does seem as though when it comes to corruption, there just is not energy and will around it. And part of that is because we know that there are people in government who benefit from weaker laws and lesser oversight. It's an interesting question. All I know is that law, that bill, is drafted and sitting there and just waits for signature.
And assuming, Gareth, that if the law then were to be strengthened, this particular law, would it be a silver bullet, so to speak?
No, I don't think there is a silver bullet, and I think we might have even been arguing 5 years ago that maybe the law was changing the law might be, at least part of the way enough. I think now we're really recognizing that this is just one very small part of a very big picture. We really are looking at a situation where we're going to have to find ways to sustain whistleblowers literally, physically, day to day. These are people who've lost their jobs. They can't pay their rent. They can't buy groceries.
Yeah.
They're in a situation where their communities are having to support them. We are having to look at the question of security for whistleblowers. Where is that coming from? How are we going to ensure that? So there's a whole range of issues
All right.
which really have to be tackled.
Okay. What I will do is I'll take a break, but also just bring in the NPA, National Prosecutions Authority, find out what their view is on this, but just generally open the lines as well. Would like to get people's experiences on this matter. Have you blown the whistle and perhaps encountered problems? Are you considering it? And if not, why not? 0891 104 208, 0891 104 208. Let me just quickly read you, because I've got a lot of SMSs, and I think they go to the crux of the matter here. People raising so many issues here. There's, for instance, one SMS that comes from Matt, and you hear this over and over again. Matt says, just because someone claims they are a whistleblower does not mean that they are not lying or are not trying to destroy a colleague or a superior. And that's an issue that I would like my guest to attend to. Also, there's someone else as well who says, blow the whistle and then they will come after you and they will kill you. And this is an issue that we've touched on with my guests already. Also, somebody says there's no one who is honest enough to report corruption too in this country. Sabata, though, says, I once blew the whistle. Being a member of the SAPS, now I'm victimized left and right. Also, I blew the whistle on corruption and the criminals are still free after 10 years. We're living in a criminal's paradise, says an SMS not signed. Tembile Mbete says, they became aware of corruption about in Ndlambe municipality in the Eastern Cape. He was assassinated. All right, it says, Tembile Mbete became aware of corruption activities in Ndlambe municipality in the Eastern Cape. He was assassinated. Tragic and disturbing. That SMS is not signed. Also, we should also distinguish between whistleblowers and those who are disgruntled, who were part of the corruption. That's Lehua in Durban. Whistleblowing is a risky and dangerous thing to do, especially against powerful ANC officials. Sometimes it is just a waste of time. A good example is that of former civil servants Mr. Chichonga and Mr. Chitangano, who were victimized by politicians for blowing the whistle. That's Katu, and we know them very well. These two civil servants, of course, one of them blowing the whistle about the textbook scandal and lost his job. He's still fighting, I think, in the labor court this day. Gabi Jackie Moile in Nelspruit says, NIA in Mpumalanga, corrupt Department of Economic Affairs, run businesses not paying tax, win all tenders, used 420,000 family clothes. Secrecy bill aims to muzzle whistleblowers. That's according to JJ. Let me take a break and we'll go to the lines, hear what your thoughts are. 0891 104 208.
The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
I'm talking to Alison Tilley, Executive Director of Open Democracy Advice Center, as well as Gareth Newham, Head of Governance, Crime and Justice Division at the Institute for Security Studies. We're talking about blowing the whistle on corruption and other wrongdoing, both on the private and the public sector in this country. Let me just quickly hear now from Bulelwa, who speaks on behalf of the National Prosecuting Authority. Bulelwa Makeke, good morning to you.
Good morning, Xolani.
Thank you. Well, from the NPA's point of view, some of the SMSs and emails I've been receiving this morning, people suggesting that you blow the whistle, you're putting your life in danger. What is the NPA's view on these matters?
Well, yes, that is the NPA's view as well, that there's a lot of danger involved in whistleblowing, especially around corruption. Corruption is a very lucrative business for those who are involved in it. So obviously, if you're trying to take all those benefits from those people, they will try anything to stop you.
Sure, but aren't there protective
this is now
measures?
where the NPA comes in. The NPA has an Office for Witness Protection, which is responsible for protecting witnesses who are threatened or who feel threatened. Part of important cases of corruption. Now, the Office for Witness Protection, firstly, let me just say, since we have taken people in the witness protection, in the NPA's witness protection program, there have been no witnesses harmed in our witness protection program. So, that's the one thing that people must really feel assured by, that if they do decide to blow the whistle, there is that if they feel scared or threatened, there is that avenue of actually getting into the witness protection program.
But the truth about the witness protection program is that once you get in there, it means that your life already is in danger, right?
It means there's a high risk that it could be in danger. Obviously, it's in danger if you're spilling the beans against corruption, especially high levels of corruption where there's millions, billions, even sometimes involved. You are obviously your life is in danger.
What is your experience,
if you
though?
Take the decision to actually report on it. then you just need to understand that it will be a bit of a problem for you in terms of, once you get into the witness protection program, you are actually removed from your normal day-to-day life, because obviously you can't be protected in your situation. You have to get into the program.
So your life has changed completely.
Your life changes completely. That's usually the thing. But once you are in the witness protection, at least you're assured that the witness protection officials will do everything to ensure that your life is protected.